Torchwood Monthly Adventures are currently on hiatus at Big Finish because they've got a new summer-long event taking place, Torchwood Among Us. We reviewed part 1 last month, which basically caught up with the Torchwood team after the events of God Among Us, after the flood of Cardiff due to divine intervention during the last epic saga. We're now in Torchwood Among Us Part 2, where we catch up with a few more characters, and they keep on putting the breadcrumb trail forward for what the overarching story arc for Among Us actually is, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So, basically, we've got Propaganda by Ash Darby, At Her Majesty's Pleasure by Tim Foley, Cuckoo by Tim Foley, and Pariahs by James Goss. 4-hour-long Torchwood adventures with a very eclectic cast. You can see Yvonne Hartman there. You can see Yanto as a hologram. You can see Billis Manger here, played by Murray Melvin in his final role. In a posthumous release, as he passed away the other month, I believe this is the last thing he ever recorded for Big Finish Productions. And you've also got Orr here, played by Samantha Baird, who is one of the Torchwood original characters from Big Finish Productions. And it is Orr who gets the first story, who gets Propaganda by Ash Darby. So Orr is investigating a civil war in a former Russian satellite town, the town of Volshenik, and is getting a plane there to discover what is happening with the resistance and the army that are there. However, slight inconvenience, the plane gets shot down while they're on board of it. And what makes things even more complicated is that Orr is on the autopsy table, and Tanya, poor Tanya, this nurse played by Amy Beth Hayes, was not expecting Orr to wake up on the operating table. Let's play a clip from Propaganda.
This is sloppy work. But I guess if they drop this from helicopter over crash site, that might work, so long as there's no one watching.
Good morning. Yes, I'm your corpse. Yes, and also... have your scalpel back. You're welcome. I presume you weren't doing a full autopsy.
This is... I was just checking the details.
Well, you missed the details that I'm still alive.
Oh, you seemed very dead a moment ago.
There's a defensive tone if ever I heard one. I'm surprisingly tough. My extraterrestrial emomorphic physiology recently got tangled with a deity. Weird things keep happening. Now, what next? Should we try the buzzsaw?
What is this? Pathologists don't normally get questioned by their corpses.
A Q&A could be quite helpful. Your turn. Ask me how I died.
No, this is... Why is this happening to me? I'm just filling in form. That's all I agreed to do, so they'd go away, fill in form so the corpse can be transported back to the crash site. Why are you doing this?
I apologize for the inconvenience.
I just want to go home. I've had a long shift upstairs.
Upstairs?
I'm a doctor in gerontology, but you can read that from my name tag.
That would be rude. Tanya, you have amazing hair. I love it.
Okay.
So I'm not that well caught up with what's been happening for Torchwood for Big Finish, but Orr, I love Orr. Orr, for those of you who do not know, is a Sorvan sexual psychomorph who can basically change their appearance based on the sexual preferences of who they are talking to, which I think is what they were trying to do at the end of that clip when it comes to complimenting the nurse's hair. So for Propaganda, Orr and Tanya go on a mission to figure out what is happening in this abandoned Russian town where there's nothing but dust piles where people should be. Trying to figure out what has happened here, why has there been a media blackout, what is... are the videos and the information coming out of this Russian town? Is it fake news? Is it deep fakes? What on earth is going on here? It's a really interesting and intriguing premise. It's slowly paced. It knows exactly when to play its hand towards the end. Really interesting story, which I believe was written before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So talk about having your finger on the pulse there in terms of some, fake news coming from a war zone where Russia is involved. Kind of mad stuff there. Orr, however, is just a fantastic character. They are just such a fun, eclectic presence to have around, where Orr and Tanya are driving away from this military blockade, and Orr's main strategy is just to smile and wave as they go past, because just in terms of just the sheer audacity of trying to get away with that, hopefully will lead to their survival. So I like the ending quite a bit. I think that what they've got for Propaganda, I believe it's a continuation from the Aliens Next Door story. I mean, it is written by Ash Darby, it's the same writer, except Eng is not there, it's just all on their own. But still, even though you don't have Eng here, Orr and Tanya are still a great double act for Propaganda. And I think that it's the double act there for Propaganda that makes it such a great story that doesn't quite work for the next story, At Her Majesty's Pleasure, by Tim Foley. The front and centre story for this Among Us box set is the return of Yvonne Hartman, who is not the actual main universe version. As you may remember, in Series 2, she was killed, or she was converted into a Cyberman, and then subsequently killed in Doomsday. This is the Yvonne Hartman in Pete's world, who was arrested at the end of Gods Among Us by Andy, played by Tom Price. And basically, she's trying to find a way to escape prison. She's somehow managed to send PC Andy a audio message over the phone. So PC Andy has gone into this high security facility to talk to Yvonne to let her know that there's no way she's escaping. Let's play a clip from At Her Majesty's Pleasure.
Do you remember the asparagus?
I'm sorry?
The asparagus, wrapped in Parma ham at the Parisienne. You'd never had it before. The delight on your face. I enjoyed that.
Right. I mean, I don't know how to process that.
Then don't. Just a memory. It's all I have these days. The past.
I don't think that's true. I think you have a future, an immediate future. Your plot, your plan.
And what's the plan for Andrew Davidson these days? Is he seeing anyone, perhaps? No, of course he isn't. Poor Andrew. Must be awfully lonely.
Are you going to tell me how you made the recording?
The recording?
You know what I mean. How was it done, and how do you intend to escape?
Am I meant to just tell you?
Yes.
Your interrogation technique needs a bit of work.
This isn't an interrogation. This is a declaration. I think you're an impressive woman, Yvonne. I really do. I've no doubt you've devised something devilishly ingenious. You think you're just going to walk right out of here?
Oh, a simple stroll around the courtyard would do just fine.
No, you want more than that. If we're still talking about memories, I remember what you said the day I arrested you.
Do you really?
Yes. But there's just one problem, one tiny little flaw in any plan that's underway. You're not getting out of here, Yvonne. Because I am going to stop you.
Now, I think Tom Price is very, very good in this story. The problem is that the story itself has basically nothing to it. Essentially, you get this inciting incident of PC Andy receiving this message from Yvonne, and then nothing happens for about 40 to 50 minutes, and then the entirely expected outcome of a Prison Break story ends up happening. And the 40 to 50 minutes that happens between the beginning and the end is basically just PC Andy and the prison governor, Charlotte, played by Natalie Grady, just wondering, how's Yvonne going to break out? What's Yvonne up to this time? What's Yvonne do? And it's just that for like 40 or 50 minutes. And then the ending happens, and then that's it. I have so little to say about At Her Majesty's Pleasure, which is so strange because it's like the centerpiece of the box set. You know, it's the return of Tracy Ann Oberman as Yvonne Hartman after the events of the last story, and you've got PC Andy, who's a fan favourite. But there's practically nothing here. When I played that clip showing the front cover of At Her Majesty's Pleasure, I was looking at the top and saw, Johnny Green's here. Johnny Green, he plays Tyler, who is a member of the new branch of Torchwood. I do not remember Tyler being in this story at all. He just has no presence here, even though he's top billed. I have no idea what this story was doing, other than we ended the last box set by having Yvonne Hartman get arrested by Andy. I guess we now have to follow through on that thing, even though we've got, nothing to actually tell in this story here. We've got nothing to say about prisons, we've got nothing to say about Yvonne's character, other than she's just maybe a bit more twisted version of River Song, I guess. PC Andy's fun, I guess, and, it's very fun to have this kind of hapless policeman who is trying very, very hard to live up to the standards of Torchwood, and he's trying to prove himself to this prison governor. But apart from that, it's just an hour-long story which just ends the way that you expect a story about a Yvonne Hartman prison break to end. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's very similar to like the War Master box set that I reviewed last time, although those stories are significantly better. Let me just make that abundantly clear. It's the fact that it's with the War Master box sets, it's the War Master's box set and the War Master always wins, so you kind of know where the ending of the story is going to go. It's the journey that needs to make the difference there. And for At Her Majesty's Pleasure, there's just no journey here. It's just, we're going to get Yvonne in a prison, Andy's going to go in, try and stop her from breaking out, and there's just going to be a bunch of conversations for 40 to 50 minutes, and then Yvonne's going to make a move. That's unironically the story. So when I get halfway through Torchwood Among Us 2, my expectations for the rest of the stories are pretty low. But then we've got Cuckoo by Tim Foley, where it's essentially a found footage horror drama set in the abandoned Torchwood hub underneath the city of Cardiff. You've got these characters who are trying to do this YouTube series about abandoned infrastructure and abandoned facilities, and they go into what remains of Torchwood 3. They go into the morgue, the iconic hexagonal T's are all on the wall, and they find something quite unexpected. Let's play a clip from Cuckoo.
Guys, it's a morgue. It's an actual morgue. And there are hexagon T's on the body drawers as well. I'm beginning to think these lot were psychos.
Relax. They'll be empty.
Yeah, well, you two seem pretty calm about being in a morgue.
The place we went to in Hereford had a morgue. If you'd have been watching our channel.
No.
Grim?
That came from inside one of those.
It's a trapped bird.
In a body drawer.
What do we do?
We leave it the fuck alone and get out of here. D.
We need to find out what it is.
Yep, I'm gonna open it.
VJ.
If it is an animal that's stuck,
Well, what if it's a fox? What if it goes for your throat?
stand back then.
Do you want me to hold the camera?
No, I got this. I don't think there's anything.
Bloody hell.
Who are you?
Sorry to startle you.
No, it's cool. Just chilling in a drawer in a morgue.
Oh, these lockers are very roomy in the back there. I mean, you dropped your camera. I do hope it isn't damaged.
It's fine.
Oh, so glad to hear it.
You need to tell us what you're doing here right now.
I was retrieving this.
What is it?
I don't think you'd care to know.
Try me.
It's a corpse flask. Gathers energy from a decaying body.
A what?
Like a flask. But instead of keeping tea warm, it's for the human soul.
Right.
So it turns out that they were not the only people who had the idea to scavenge in the Torchwood 3 hub. Billis Manger is there, played by Murray Melvin. I said at the top of the segment that this was his last release for Big Finish, or it could have been his last release for Big Finish. Flippant in the chat says that they've confirmed via Twitter that he has recorded more Torchwood, so this is not the last Murray Melvin performance. If it was, however, it would obviously be a shame, because the way that this story ends means there's a bit more for Billis Manger to do, I think. But still, this would have been an incredible final performance, final send-off. Murray Melvin's spectacular in this story, just playing this unassuming old guy who is just in the Torchwood hub finding stuff that can steal people's souls. For those of you who don't remember, Billis Manger was one of the primary antagonists in Torchwood Series 1. He was a servant of Abaddon, he was an ally of the light as well in other Torchwood Big Finish stories. Basically, this guy is almost like the War Master, but it's R-rated, so he can do some really violent stuff. And he does. Tim Foley, I think, has so much fun with this script of what a death trap the Torchwood hub is once it's abandoned without safety protocols. There is a scene involving the now iconic Torchwood lift that takes you to the streets of Cardiff that was so grim and so dark, and I can tell that Tim Foley had so much fun writing it as well. You've got this cast of young people led by VJ, who's played by Nathaniel Curtis, who are trying to put together this documentary, this YouTube series about these abandoned infrastructures, and they find themselves just way over their heads. They find themselves in a situation trapped with the servant of a demon, Billis, and they also find, as you can tell by the cover as well, a holographic Ianto. So this is the fate of Ianto Jones, played by Gareth David Lloyd, where he is a hologram in the abandoned Torchwood hub and is awoken by the presence of people who are in there investigating. And the direction that this takes is so grim and, like, really bittersweet. Like, it's great to hear Gareth David Lloyd in a post-Children of Earth appearance for Torchwood, and he has no idea quite how long he's been asleep for as a hologram, or quite how, you know, what's been going on in the interim years. How is it dark and grim? I can't get into spoilers. I'm sorry, Santarana. There's some stuff. Firstly, I cannot describe what happens because I will get told off in terms of, like, YouTube terms and conditions. Very violent. But also, it's just general spoilers. If you want to know, check out the box set yourself. I try to keep these Big Finish reviews spoiler-free. What's the UK equivalent of R-rated? 15. We'll go for 15 rated. But what happens in this story in Cuckoo is 18 rated. I think so. It's 18 rated. So the direction that they take this holographic Ianto Jones is really bittersweet and really dark, and some, like, Black Mirror in terms of, like, purely cynical depictions of technology. That was really, really effective and particularly great for this story. Like, one of the final dialogue exchanges of the story between Ianto and VJ is, like, rip your heart out of stuff. Like, this does feel like a War Master story, but with no War Master. It's just the absolute cruelty of humanity that is now embodied in the decayed ruins of the Torchwood 3 hub, and you've just got these innocent teenagers, these innocent YouTubers, just completely stuck in this inhospitable and depraved environment. It was a really, really great story. Cuckoo is the head and shoulder standout of this box set. Like, Maury Melvin's terrific as well. Billis is such a great villain as well. And like I said, the story ends with a bit more work for Billis to do. So I'm glad that Maury Melvin has a few more performances that we have yet to appreciate over the course of Big Finish's Torchwood run. Now we've got Pariahs, which is the finale of this box set, written by James Goss. And it's centered around this organization, Phobos, which is one of those, like, DNA companies. You know, you submit your DNA and then it figures out your history, your past, your family lineage and things like that. They were also involved in putting together the vaccine for the COVID-19 pandemic, which is apparently canon in the Doctor Who universe. Phobos has been accused of illegally profiteering from the pandemic and doing some really, really bad things with the user data. Mr. Colchester, who is another Big Finish original character, voiced by Paul Clayton, is taking a politician, Graham Graves, who is voiced by Richard Clifford, is tasked with getting him to a hearing, an inquiry, into the investigation of Phobos. Meanwhile, Orr is trying to get a whistleblower, Kyle Landsman, who is played by Glenn McCready, also is trying to get them to the inquiry. It's a race against time, because everybody wants them dead. Here's a clip from Torchwood, Pariahs.
Too late to make a run for it.
Oh, you haven't changed.
I'm sorry.
They've automatic custom-made machine pistols, probably firing dum-dums. They're not just going to shoot us, they're going to cut us in half.
Who would dare to kill me?
They're not even thinking of making it look like an accident.
That gives a fellow pause.
There are 40 cars on this level. They'll be checking in and under all of them, probably methodically. I chose a corner near an exit ramp because it'll take them time to reach it, and one of us stands a chance of making it out.
Very noble of you.
I intended to be me.
Eh?
If they've half a brain cell, they'll realize this spot is strategically a good place to hide. Now, this should draw them off.
What's that?
Wireless car key. With luck, it'll hit a frequency and... bingo. Throw them off the scent towards a yellow car, boxy. giving me time to find the code to this car. We can just keep them from looking in this direction. Oh. What the hell? Damn! Buggering thing!
Do you think they had?
No.
And before you ask, yes, the fact that this politician's phone ringtone is a laughing young child is a very creepy detail that becomes a recurring beat over the course of Pariahs. Now, Pariahs ends pretty strongly, but to get to the last 15 to 10 minutes of Pariahs is honestly quite a slog. This took me quite a while to get into, because I honestly found like the setup, the separating of all of the Torchwood characters and stuff. Like, you look at the cover of Pariahs and, you know, it's all of the cast members together with guns and stuff like that, and it's meant to be very epic, but they're basically separated for the majority of this story. And also, like, Eng and Tyler, gun to my head, I could not tell you what they did in this story. It's a Colchester and Orr story where they're trying to get these two witnesses across the country taking their own separate journeys, and that's where most of the interesting stuff happens. These two, I've no idea what they were doing over the course of the box set. It's incredibly dense, and because the Torchwood team have been, like, you know, they've been separated for a while and they're coming together for this mission, there's an awful lot of gaps that need filling in. Like, how have they reunited? Who has assigned them to this mission? How did they get a hold of these people? And how are Torchwood involved in this Flowboss scandal? That stuff I don't believe is ever actually explained. So by the time you're in the second act and things are starting to heat up and their action sequences are kicking in, I didn't know what was going on. I found it utterly incomprehensible. And, you know, Mr. Colchester's meant to be having like a pre-established relationship with Graham, which they bring up, but I have no idea how they know each other. Is this like a previous relationship that was in a previous box set? I have no idea. They're talking about these past events and assuming that we already know what's going on. There's a fight scene in a train bathroom, and it makes me wonder, how on earth did that fight scene happen in a train bathroom of all confined spaces? And also, there's dialogue and everything, and there's even a Tannoy announcement on the train while the fight's happening. I genuinely could not hear what on earth was going on over there. It took me a while to even realize they were on a train. I thought they were on a plane until someone mentioned they were on a train, and then I just had to mentally recalibrate there. Orr and Kyle have got a fun dynamic once again. Orr is a terrific character. I love everything about them. But honestly, it's just a case of trying to get to the last 10 to 15 minutes in order to advance the Among Us storyline and try and figure out what on earth, the child's voice on the phone from the last box set, and what was the Russian super weapon that was in the first story of this box set in Propaganda, because it links into that as well. Who's really pulling the strings behind the scenes and stuff like that. Honestly, it was a pretty unsatisfying listen, because it was really interested in like the messaging at the end of like this super sci-fi super weapon that can be used through people's data and DNA and algorithms and stuff like that, but not really trying to find like an emotional hook for it. It felt like the villain at the end was just kind of monologuing, because this is where the dark dramatic monologue has to happen for a story with this subject matter. I don't know, honestly, I was pretty let down by Pariahs. It was trying to be like an action-packed, globe-hopping story, but I didn't know who was who for a while. I didn't know how they got into this situation, how the Torchwood team is currently logistically working. That was really frustrating to try and figure out what was going on. Like I said, half of the cast members on the cover were barely even present in the story. It was, honestly, it just felt like it simultaneously bit off more than it could chew, and also just there wasn't even a sandwich in its hand. It's a very strange story. It felt like it was it felt weird. I don't know. It doesn't feel like this is one big cohesive epic saga, with the exception of, one second, let's actually go through the Among Us saga. You've got Aliens Next Door, you've got Moderation, and then you've got Propaganda and Pariahs. These are 8 stories so far, and only 4 of them seem to be advancing the plot. You've got these middle chapters, which from what I can tell, might have just been Torchwood monthly adventures, but they decided to put them together for this event stuff. They feel so disconnected. I don't know where the Torchwood team is in relation to each other, or what they're doing, or what their status quo is after the flood in God Among Us. I don't know what's going on here, and I feel like that's kind of vital to what's going on. I don't know, it's just a bit frustrating. You know, the dialogue's great and the performances are terrific. Like, I love Paul Clayton as Colchester, I love Samantha Bear as Orr. I think they're terrific. I just think that they're not really being given stories with much emotional depth in terms of what the characters themselves are doing, and it's kind of more interested in, you know, Russian fake news conflict, COVID-19 fake news, DNA, illegal profiteering. You know, it's got its finger on the pulse of all of these issues, but I'm not quite sure what the actual story is here. I don't quite know why I should be invested in this Torchwood team investigating this stuff that I don't even really understand what's going on here yet. I don't know. As someone who has listened to series 5 and 6 but not this, does this continue plot strands from that? Now, I've not listened to God Among Us or Aliens Among Us. I've been relying on TARDIS Wiki to fill me in whenever stuff like that is mentioned in the Among Us storyline. And also, for Among Us Part 1, you've got this story with Gwen Cooper in Misty Eyes by Tim Foley. I don't think that Eve Miles is in any more stories in this box set. Like, Misty Eyes ends with Gwen being like, yeah, I'm going to rejoin Torchwood, we've got work to do. And from what I can tell, she's just not doing anything now. If the Torchwood team are together doing missions, like they are in Pariahs, surely she should be here, right? I don't get it. This does not seem like a connected, cohesive saga. This just seems like disconnected plot threads, and every so often will throw the audience a bone. I was pretty disappointed in this. Cuckoo is amazing, and Propaganda is a intriguing story that is, you know, especially in the current political climate with the Russia-Ukraine war. But the rest of it, like, that are meant to be moving the characters forward, I found it significantly lacking. Part 1 was significantly better than Part 2, I think. Part 3 comes out at the end of July, so we'll see if this whole saga can stick the landing. But, you know, when you get all of these characters on the front cover, and then you listen to the story, and they're barely together, they're barely interacting, I don't know, it just feels like... it feels like the Torchwood characters... they don't really know what to do with them, other than to put them in some dark topical stories. But I don't know, there's nothing character-wise here. There's nothing interesting going on in Part 2, at least. In Part 1, there was the interesting stuff with, you know, Gwen and Reese and that, and a few others. But yeah, Torchwood doesn't seem to be working without its leader. I don't even know who's leading Torchwood right now. This feels like maybe it's a flat team structure, and that's, you know, that's a fair approach, but I don't know logistically how Torchwood's working. Among Us Part 1 I enjoyed. I think it's currently in, like, my top 10 Big Finish box sets of the year so far. But Among Us Part 2, in terms of the main story arc, pushing that forward was a real letdown. Cuckoo's fantastic, though. Like, if they somehow release Cuckoo on its own, which you probably could do, because Cuckoo has, for all intents and purposes, bloody nothing to do with the rest of the stories. You know, Cuckoo's really, really good, but it's not worth the price of admission, like, from a nearly £30 box set that doesn't really seem that interested in the rest of the Torchwood team, which is because I want to get to know them. I want to know what's going on. This was a bit disappointing.